a little bit about him. He makes movies, he writes, and he teaches thousands of kids to read. He can tell us more about that. He has written and produced and directed a number of films, including Sex, Drugs, and Democracy, Anarchy TV, and Collecting America, as well as screenplays for 2 new fiction films, Shaolin Kid, an action-oriented family film, and Zentropy, a comedy. And today he'll be speaking about using documentaries for social advocacy, so I'll throw the floor.
It's hard to see, but there's actually an image behind here. So all my hard work is lost in the glare of Dutch sunlight. Did you turn off the light? I don't know if that's going to help. I think it might be mostly the daylight outside. So, using documentaries for social advocacy. I think at this point, in the beginning, when people made documentaries, it was just to show something. Like if any of you have seen Nanook of the North, which was a really amazing documentary. I forget what year it was done, very early 1900s. But this guy carted this ancient, well at that time the modern, but film equipment up into northern Canada and showed what Eskimo life was like. And the process he had to go through was so arduous just because of the equipment. Now, of course, we have amazing equipment. But over time, documentaries have become more and more about shedding light on something that maybe people aren't seeing in the endless stream of news that we're getting, so that you find out a little bit more and perhaps take action based on that. So, click. All right, here are, what's something, is that your head? There we go. All right, here's a few documentaries that have actually had social impact. Titicut Follies is probably the grandfather or grandmother of social advocacy films. It came out in 1967. It was banned when it came out. It was about a mental institution, and it showed how they were treating people, and it freaked people out. And there were multiple lawsuits, free speech lawsuits, and ultimately the mental hospital that was in the movie was shut down. But people had no idea that this stuff was going on, and it blew people's minds. The Thin Blue Line came out, and that's a very famous documentary. And it reopened a case of a man convicted of murder, and that person was ultimately released from prison. In Ask Not for Whom the Bell Tolls. 2002, Michael Moore did Bowling for Columbine, and he's hilarious. I love what he does. He actually took victims of the Columbine shooting, which was not the very first school shooting, but the first big one that got a lot of attention, and it was a mass shooting. And he took a couple of the victims to Kmart, which is a store in the US that I think is going out of business now, if it hasn't already. But he took them, and they still had the bullets inside their bodies, and he asked them to get a refund on the bullets. And he publicly shamed them to the point where Kmart said, we're no longer going to sell ammunition. I actually saw, he had a TV show for a while on TV for a short time, and he, there was in the US, healthcare is a big issue, and the lack of healthcare. He took a guy who had cancer, and the insurance company wouldn't pay for his treatment, and he was treatable. The insurance company was denying him life-saving care. And he had a funeral for the man in front of the office of the health insurance company, and filmed it and put it on television, and shamed the insurance company into actually paying for his health insurance. So that was really cool. Super Size Me got a lot of attention in 2004. It's a story of a guy who eats McDonald's all day, every day for 30 days, and he tracks what happens to his body. And after it came out, and the results in the movie show him getting rapidly ill. And McDonald's stopped selling supersize meals after that came out. They didn't address it, they didn't say this is because of the movie, but they stopped doing it. In 2009, if you ever saw The Cove, really disturbing film about a slaughter of dolphins that happens every year in Japan. And they haven't stopped yet, but the numbers have gone way down. And the people, the zoos and aquariums that used to buy the dolphins, because a lot were slaughtered and then some were captured, they're no longer buying the dolphins from there. And the filmmaker who made that has gone on to make several other films that are really great. Blackfish came out in 2013, and if you saw that, that was about the treatment of the orcas at SeaWorld. And it shocked a lot of people because, you know, they had one, I think that orca is dead now, called Shamu, and kids loved Shamu, and they all had little stuffed Shamu animals. And when kids started feeling like, oh, Shamu is actually being abused horribly, they didn't want to go to SeaWorld anymore. And so SeaWorld is now changing their policies. They lost a lot of their sponsors. They've been investigated, and they are now ending their orca breeding program. There's still a lot of pressure on SeaWorld, and there are a lot of people hoping that they go out of business completely. So those are some success stories, things that have had some serious impact. Click. Okay. So how do you do films that have social impact? I think, you know, you want to, before you start, set up your goals and your mission and your plan for what it is that you want to do. There's something that you've seen in the world that you want to tell people about, and you want to have an impact from doing that. So first off, define what your mission is, because if you don't really know what it is that you want to do, it's going to be hard to achieve anything. So you may not know for sure at the beginning. You may say, I see this thing that's bothering me, but I don't know what to do about it. And you start doing interviews, you start the process, but as soon as you can, the earlier you can define what it is that you want to say, the clearer you will be, the clearer your message will be. This is Invisible Wars about the abuse of women in the US military, and that's had a pretty big impact. Then do a lot of research on your subject, and also while you're doing that research, think about how you might get attention for it. Because there's subjects out there that are easy to get attention and in the news, and there are subjects that are really hard to get anybody to write about or put into the media. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't make a movie about it. It might mean you should extra make a movie about it, right? But you have to know in advance, it's going to be really hard to get anybody to give me any coverage on this, so that you go in with your eyes open about what it is. Bully hit a subject that has gotten a lot of attention in the US, which is bullying of students. And it's an epidemic in the United States. Kids are killing themselves on a regular basis, especially gay, lesbian, transgender students, and individuals, but this is about schools in particular. And so they keyed in on this subject that was getting a lot of media attention, and as a result, their movie got a lot of media attention too and did quite well. The next step is think about your audience. Okay, who is the audience for your movie? Go in knowing who that is, and then you could decide if you want to tailor your movie for that audience. Or if you don't care and you just say, I'm going to go for, I think everybody needs to know about this. But when you do that, you have to realize most people don't watch documentaries. You know, now they're getting a lot more attention because of things like Netflix. And there are doc-only channels out there. Now, Gimme Shelter is a weird example, but I put it up there because it's a movie about the Rolling Stones. It's a concert film, so that has a huge audience. Now, when they made it, they had no intention of making a social advocacy film. But what happened is they actually had footage of a murder that took place at the concert, and that footage ended up becoming part of a trial. This is a very famous movie if you've never seen it. It was a big concert in California that the Rolling Stones gave. They hired the Hells Angels, which is a motorcycle gang, to provide security for the concert, which was a big mistake. But someone got killed at the concert. They had footage. The footage became part of the legal process, and that added to the film's reputation and really made it much more famous than it might have been otherwise. Identify social change agents, organizations, media networks, celebrities. Now, Leo DiCaprio has done 2 or 3 big climate change movies now. If you've got Leo DiCaprio, that's really great, obviously. If you've got Leo, now there are different ways of doing this. There are a lot of celebrities out there who you can pay to do your voiceover for your movie, okay? And just saying, narrated by Peter Coyote or, to some lower level stars, it helps. It can help you get into film festivals. It just gives you some name recognition that you're attaching to your project. And sometimes you can just pay for that. And these, because basically for them, there are all these stars, they work all the time, and maybe it's $5,000, you could hire one, or $10,000, and it can make the difference between getting distribution and not. You approach their agent, you say, and for them it's maybe an hour or 2 of work. They come into a studio, you got the mic there, they're super professional if you're hiring someone like that. You give them the lines, they read it through, you sit there and they go, is that good? And you go, wow, that's great, or can you do it once more, and you go through it with them and boom, you've got your narration done. So that's one thing. If you've got someone who wants to finance it like Leo DiCaprio or really put themselves in the movie, that's even better. If they're willing to go to film festivals, well, that's even better because film festivals all want celebrities. So if you've got a celebrity willing to help you, you're going to do really well with that. But that's something to consider. It's obviously more challenging. You may be able to put celebrities in your movie. You may be able to interview celebrities. A lot of celebrities like to talk about things that are not their career, just to show that they care about issues. And this is especially true with the environment. Big issues, gender identity is a big issue now. It really depends on what the subject is, but there's usually some celebrity out there who's into something, and it can be hard to get to them. And that's often the big challenge, because if you don't know them personally, you can't just email them. They've got people reading stuff, and most of those people will throw your stuff away without ever telling the celebrity about it. So you need to work your angles and get your friends. Sometimes it pays to hire a casting director. And because a casting director knows all of these people's agents, and the casting director will get the agent to actually respond to you. And you can pay a casting director, if you've got someone and you say, can you do like 10 hours of work for me? I'll pay you $2,500, and they get you to something. Now, all of this is money, and obviously it's not cheap, but it's also not that expensive if ultimately it makes your film that much bigger and more important to people. So there are ways of doing it if you want. Obviously the best is if you have personal connections, or if you know the person yourself. That's awesome. Identify supportive media. There's all the old media, like the old newspapers, and then there's all the new media out there, all the internet sites, and then of course social media. And they're, there was a guy I hired years ago to work on. I have an educational website, and there was a guy I hired, he and his wife, and they were just starting out in social media, and they did great work for me. And then they went off and started their own little social media site called Power of Positivity. And all of a sudden the thing took off like crazy. They now have like 25 million followers on Facebook. So there are sites out there on Facebook that have enormous followings. And again, there are also the celebrities who have enormous followings. On Twitter, Instagram, and now there are new ones coming up, TikTok and so on. If you can get those people to talk about your project, you're hitting a huge audience that's much bigger than a newspaper. So find your people and get to your people. Find a way to get them to notice you. Then some of the old ones have things now, like New York Times has OpDocs. They are actually creating documentaries. Now, they're doing it usually through their network of people they know, but they do sometimes hire people they are just meeting to make short documentaries. They get on the New York Times website, which is enormous. The Boston Globe is doing that, and there are many other newspapers. And then your social advocacy movie is going to have a built-in huge audience, and not only that, but it's very likely that the New York Times is going to write a story about your documentary and probably get it reviewed in the New York Times, and that's the kind of thing that helps with your career down the line too. Be open to change, and because you come in, you make the perfect plan, you know exactly what you're doing, and then something else comes up that is maybe even a better story. And there's a great example called Capturing the Friedmans. It's a little hard to see. This guy, he's actually an interesting character. He made a fortune with, I forget which site it was, and he decided, I just want to make movies. And so he started doing documentaries. And he wanted to make a movie about clowns. Weird topic, right? But that's cool. That's what documentaries are for. While he was doing it, he uncovered that this clown he was making a movie about, his family had a history of child molestation, which again is a very hot topic right now in the US. And he ended up making a movie about child molestation when he started off trying to make a movie about clowns. So it was clowns that molest children. So it's kind of like a Stephen King horror movie. But so he was open to completely changing it. That movie got a tremendous amount of attention, played a lot of film festivals, and has done exceptionally well. Click. All right, so funding, right? This is the part that is often the most challenging. Nowadays, everybody has a camera in their pocket that is better than the video cameras you could buy for thousands of dollars 10 years ago, okay? So a lot of people are out there shooting docs with their phones, and they look pretty darn good, especially if you take care, you learn how to use it, and you deal with sound, which was really important. Michael Moore says, get a sound person. He says sound is more important than what's in the picture. He goes, if you're in an audience, and I'm not sure I totally agree with his, he had a whole little article about this, but sound is super important. And if people can't hear what the people are saying, if it sounds like crap, you're gonna lose your audience at that point. So here's, we talked about Kickstarter and all the other ones out there. There are organizations that have grants. Now, we talked about grants. I find grant applications really annoying because you spend an enormous amount of time and you rarely get them. Okay, they almost always go to people that the grant committee knows. So if you don't know people on the grant committee, you're going to have a tough time. It's possible. It really helps if you're a minority or a woman filmmaker or someone who they want to fund more. So if you're in some niche group that they're looking to fund, you're in a better position. But there are organizations like if you're a woman and you're making a movie about something of interest to women, you would go to Women Make Movies, and they have a fund available And they give small blocks of money. It's usually not enough to make your whole movie, but it's something. And then when you have, someone gives you money, it's easier to get other people to give you money. Because no one likes to be the first. Because they're like, well, what if this sucks? But oh, they said they're giving you money? Oh, I'll give you money too. And so it's good to get going. Filmmakers Without Borders is another organization that gives out grants. The IDA has the Enterprise Documentary Fund. The Sundance Institute helps sponsor films. And what you'll see is that if you go to Sundance or just look at their website and see what's there, many of the films that show at Sundance were developed at Sundance. Must be a coincidence, right? So it's great to get in early, and of course Sundance is the most important film festival in the United States and possibly the world for independent film. So some other things, self-funding, okay, and that's obvious, all right? Usually you need to get the ball rolling yourself in some way. Even if you want to do a Kickstarter, you need to put up a sizzle reel, right? Something to get people to see what you're working on. So you gotta get going yourself. And usually that's not too hard. The cameras that are available nowadays, I recently bought, Blackmagic has a new camera called the 4K. It's $1,300. It's freaking amazing. There are people shooting with it and it looks like a red, you know, so get yourself a good camera, get yourself a really good microphone, go do some interviews, go get started filming, and make a great sizzle reel, okay? You can hit up your friends and family, there's crowdfunding, wealthy individuals are out there who are interested in your subject. You can find those people pretty easily because most big organizations show who their top donors are, okay? The trouble is getting to those people once you identify them. All right, now, in the I don't know what it's like here in the Netherlands, but in the US, you can get a tax break for donating money. All right, and that's how all rich people like to give money. They don't want to just give you money, they want to get a tax deduction for giving you money. Now, as an individual, you can't give them a tax break, okay? But if you get a fiscal sponsor that is a 501c3, which is a charitable organization, then you can actually make your donation to your film tax deductible for the people who donate money to you. Now the fiscal sponsors, and I think Women Make Movies is a fiscal sponsor, Filmmakers Without Borders will function as a fiscal sponsor. There are several organizations out there, and you sign up with them, they take a percentage of the money you get, but they enable you to make your donation tax deductible. And that is an enormous benefit to fundraising. And you can do it for docs, you can also do it for fiction films. There are organizations, and in-kind contributions is another great way. There are a lot of rental houses out there that have equipment that's not always being used, and as long as you can work within their schedule, you promise them a credit. Sometimes it's, you know, you can even make them a co-producer of some kind on your film, and they will hook you up with cameras, lighting, sound, editing equipment, and so on. Okay, click. All right, marketing and distribution. Now, a lot of people wait to start marketing and distribution. I think you should start marketing and distribution immediately when you start your project, okay? Think about this, you know, as you're starting research, okay? How am I gonna do this? What kind of images am I gonna collect? What kind of media do I have to share? All right, and so start early, make a plan for what you're going to do, and stick with the plan. Because I don't know how many, I check out a lot of people's film marketing. All right, when I meet a filmmaker and they say, yeah, I'm on Facebook, and I go and I check out their stuff. And a lot of times I think, wow, that filmmaker has a really great movie, and their social media sucks, okay? And I think it's sad because they've got a great movie and they're not helping people, all right? So make a plan and stick to it. Say, I'm going to post once a week from now on until I'm done with this movie, however long that takes, okay? And then do it. And I'm going to do Facebook, I'm going to do Twitter, I'm going to do Instagram, I'm going to do TikTok, whatever it is. Identify the social media network that is ideal for your project and then stick to it. Because if people see, oh, you posted once when you won an award at the Hague Global Cinema Festival and then you're not posting again for the next 3 months until something else good happens to you, they're like, well, I have no interest in this page. I never hear from them. I don't know anything about them. So whatever it is, you might decide I'm going to post every day. All right? I decided with Sex, Drugs, and Bicycles I'm going to post every day. It's an experiment. I don't know how well it's going to work out, but I did it. Now, the key way to do that, and I'm fortunate that my significant other is a social media marketer, so she's trained me up on doing all this stuff, but you schedule things, okay? So I'm here in the Netherlands. I don't know what time it is where I'm from, but at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, there's going to be a post that hits Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and it's all scheduled wherever I am, all right? And what I do is about once a month, I sit down in my computer and I say, what am I going to schedule for the next month? And I make up 60 posts, because I post twice a day, and this is content it's content that I believe my people who are interested in sex, drugs, and bicycles are going to be interested in. I'm not going to just post random stuff that they're not, because I want to develop an audience. And I want an audience that wants to see my movie, and hopefully maybe my next movie too, right? So content that they're interested in, I look for, and you're all smart people, you come up with things that work for you and your project, but I look for things that aren't tied directly to time, okay? Because I'm posting 30 days in advance. You know, I want things that are going to be current in 30 days and hopefully longer, you know, so that it's, and there are a lot of sites out there doing news 24/7. I don't want to compete with those people. I post humor, because humor is always great, no matter what you're doing. People love funny stuff on the internet, right? But also my movie is funny, or at least it's trying to be funny. And so it's in the voice of the movie that I'm sharing, right? So that's the kind of content I create, and I do it with predictability, okay? Then, and if something timely happens, then I just post when it happens. I'm on my phone, I'm like, oh, this is a big story that just came out about bicycles, you know, and it's great, and I'm gonna post, you know, like the other day there was a video of Macron from France and the Danish Prime Minister getting on bicycles in Copenhagen and riding around Copenhagen, and I was like, this is fantastic, and I just tweeted it and sent it out. But most of the time everything is pre-planned, okay? It's really important to engage with your followers when they respond to your content. So, you know, if you get people who are excited about what you're posting, if they ask questions, answer them. If they're like, wow, this is great, you know, answer back, thanks so much. You know, like, engage with them and they feel like they're communicating directly with the filmmaker, and people love that, you know. They think, oh, I'm talking to the director, or, you know, and they don't know that you're just like some person in a room trying to get people to notice your movie. You know, it's just, it's exciting to people, so, and make sure you do that, because if you just put your stuff out there and you don't engage with anybody, they're gonna feel like, oh, why should I bother with this? Now, when I started, you know, every time people shared my content, and people share my content a lot, I would go in and like that they shared it, you know, to say thank you to them, because this is all like a weird endorphin delivery system, and everybody's looking for likes, you know, and approval and that kind of stuff. It's a little bit warped, but you have to work within the system that you have. Festivals, we all know about festivals. There's theatrical. That is a market that's getting smaller and smaller and harder and harder. We talked about that before. There's non-theatrical, so schools, that's, depending on what your subject is, if it's pretty G-rated, you know, in terms of the content, you can get into schools and you can become part of a curriculum. If you're doing something, especially about a subject that is hot, like bullying, as long as it's not going to be offensive to people in a way that they feel like they can't show it to students, there's a really good market for schools. There are distributors that specialize in that, and they pay for your movie. There are people that make a substantial chunk of money in the non-theatrical. There are political organizations. I get calls from people, liberal groups, who say, can we show your movie as a fundraiser? And they pay me, and then they charge an entrance fee for people to come in and watch the movie. And then, of course, VOD, video on demand. You've got the Vimeo is probably the best one right now in terms of your ability to craft a marketing campaign the way you want it and get people to pay you the most. Amazon pays you almost nothing. The benefit, of course, is that you're on Amazon. So if people search on Amazon, which is the world's largest shopping search engine, then you come up. But the flip side is, most people aren't going to search for you, okay? Or unless there's, unless your movie title is has search terms that are common, they're not going to find you randomly. And Amazon now is all about advertising, so they want you to pay for advertising. Products come up higher in the list if you pay for advertising. It's a very corrupt system. But Vimeo, they pay you the most, and then you're responsible for marketing it the way you want, and you can do that yourself. Okay, so, someone asked before about some of the new, here are two of the new documentary channels, Curiosity Stream and Snag Films, that are on the internet. There are several more out there that are doc-only channels, and some of them pay and some of them pay a percentage. It's hard to make money with these people. If you have a subject and you have an audience for that subject, you can make the most money selling it directly yourself to those people. In my experience, when you go with a distributor, you don't make any money at all. Okay, they make money, and then they send you an accounting statement where somehow you make no money. And that's how it's worked for me. Most of the filmmakers I speak with say the same thing. So if you can go out there and get, 1,000 people to pay you $5, you just made $5,000, less fees, of course. If you can get 20,000 people to pay you $5, well, okay, all of a sudden you're talking about some significant revenue. And of course it requires work, but it's work building an audience that, and when you're doing it directly on the internet yourself, you can get those people's email addresses, sometimes their phone numbers, certainly their social media, and then you can contact them again on your next project. Okay, you can raise money from those people. Those are great people to go to and ask for a Kickstarter donation and promise them a DVD for my next movie because they're your fan. What was that article where the guy said all you need is 1,000? There's a famous article.
Long tail, Chris Anderson, I think.
Okay, where he makes a whole case for your ability to make a living. I think he was talking about writers, but you can make a living as an artist if you get a core group of dedicated fans willing to give you $20 a year, right? So they buy a DVD from you once a year for $20, and you've got 5,000 of those people. You've got a $100,000 revenue stream that you start off your life with every year, right? So that can be super valuable, and you're not waiting for Netflix, which pays $10 million for Knock Down the House and pays next to nothing for a lot of their other documentaries. Okay, so you can get yourself out of that world and into your own world where you're building your own audience and people who want to fund you. Click. Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I spoke to someone. They had a limited theatrical release for a small feature film that they made, and then they wanted to sell it to Netflix, and exactly what you say is next to nothing.
Next to nothing.
Yeah, and
It's
then they
sad.
said, because it's an algorithm that says, okay, how many people have seen this, and how important is this film? So
Yeah.
they've
A lot of
literally
it,
removed
yeah.
the entire human element from it. So,
Yeah, and I mean, like they knocked down the house for $10 million because they wanted to get $10 million worth of free media attention by having every newspaper say, Netflix knocked down the house for $10 million, right? So all these things, they're looking at things from a perspective that's different from, this is a great movie with a great audience. They have a whole complicated set of things.
yeah, so what this friend of mine did is he set up his own little distribution company, not to make money from it, but just to make that scope larger of distribution. So they got he distributed it himself in the Benelux, and then went back to Netflix, and suddenly that number was much different.
Yeah.
Because then more people are more relevant. Simple
Yeah,
as that.
that's right. It's about perceptions of heat. You know, how hot is your project?
Yeah.
And that's what drives that. Okay, measuring success. All right, so you wanted to make a social issue movie, you wanted to advocate for something that you thought was important. How do you define your success if you don't sell to Netflix for $10 million? Okay, well, you can look at video views, and now of course with this whole world of the internet, you can get really granular information about who's watching your movie, how many people are actually watching your movie. It's really interesting. Now there have been several articles like this about filmmakers who've tracked submitting their films to film festivals, and they use a Vimeo, and they see that the film festivals never even watched their movie. And so they're busting people like that. But you can do it the other way, and you can see who watched my movie, where did they come from, what part of the world are these people living in that wanted to see my movie. And you can learn a lot. There's YouTube video, Facebook is promoting things. They have a thing called Facebook Watch that they're promoting now. TikTok is the new one that has short form videos. Instagram allows now Instagram is allowing longer form videos, and some of these you can monetize and some of them you cannot. And you have to decide ultimately what is your goal. It might be that you want to make a 10-minute documentary about something super important to you and get it up for free on YouTube and Facebook and just get as many people to watch it as possible. Social media engagement. This is another area where you can measure how many people are liking your posts, how many people are sharing it, which is really important, because when people share something, it means it's really important to them, because they don't share most things. Your comments, your mentions, your retweets, and so on. You can collate this information and you can make it part of a marketing plan, either to sell your movie that is done, or to help you make your next movie. When you're going to investors, you can say, my last movie, we got 1 million likes, it was shared this many times, it generated this amount of engagement, and they can go, well, that's pretty cool. Okay, so it's a way for you to get a kind of source of demographic information that helps you as a filmmaker that we never used to have 10 years ago. It didn't exist. And before, there was no way to say, people really are interested in my movie. People would go, well, how do you know? Well, now you know. You can prove that people are interested in your movie, and you can show the evidence of it. Actions taken. You know, did people do something? You know, did something happen from watching your movie? Was a new organization formed? Was there a new initiative? Was there legislation on a city, state, or federal level that people took from watching this? This happens quite frequently. You know, people see a movie, a legislator sometimes sees a movie and says, I'm going to do something about this, and they write a law, and sometimes they get passed. Closing and opening of institutions. Community building is another big area. You know, sometimes these movies come out and a whole community is formed around a subject where people say, yeah, that's important to me. And again, that can be great for your movie, it can be great for your future, but it's great for taking action because people coming together enables them to act in a much stronger way than people alone, obviously. Change in the public discourse. Are people now talking about orcas and captivity when they weren't before? Well, yeah, after Blackfish they were. Okay, before it was Shamu, and after it was torturing orcas. Change in policy or political debate. And I'll just give you a couple of examples that happened to me when I made my movie Sex, Drugs, and Democracy 20 years ago. It came out and it was about the Netherlands. And like for instance, in Portland, Oregon, which is a city in northwest of the US, some people saw that movie and they saw there was a section in the movie about the Dutch white bike program. For those of you who don't know, in the 60s, there was this hippie movement in the Netherlands called the Provo's, and they took a bunch of bikes, they painted them white, and they left them out for people, and they said, everybody can ride a free white bike. Okay, it wasn't successful here, but these guys saw it, and they said, let's do that in Portland, and they started this yellow bike program. So an article, one day I opened the New York Times, which is the most important newspaper in the world, and I saw this article, and they're talking about my movie and how they saw my movie, and they started this yellow bike program. And I called up my mom, look, I did something, you know. And another thing that happened is some rich dude saw my movie, and he called me up, and he said, I want to send your movie to every member of Congress. And I was like, okay, where do I sign up for? So he paid, and he paid to send a copy of my movie to every member of the US Congress and every member of the US Supreme Court. And then he hired a publicist to publicize it. So that was another cool thing that happened. Did it do anything? I don't know, but now pot's legal all over America, so I'd like to say that it did. So, but those are some little things. It wasn't my intention when I started, but I did intend to bring these ideas to people, and in some way I succeeded on that. And I think that was the last slide. Maybe there's one more slide at the end, but this is just, okay.
This is very important slide.
Yeah, all right. So if anybody wants to contact me, here's all my ways of contacting me. Make yourself easy to find on social media. And this is a sample of one of the memes that I share on my page. So if you like funny little memes, you can subscribe to my Facebook page. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Question or two, and we will take a 10-minute break, tea time or anything. We have more discussions. Then after that, we have 3 more speakers. So, does anyone have any? Okay.
Yeah, you talked about a 501c3, and I've heard that term tossed around a lot. What's it take to make you have to have an LLC at the very least to make it a 501c3?
No, a 501c3 is its own organization.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and it's complicated to create. It takes quite a bit of paperwork, and it takes quite a bit of time. So one way to do it, if you have access to resources, is to buy someone else's 501c3, and that cuts through some of the work involved. But you have to apply to the IRS and go through all the paperwork, and it takes some time. You have to prove that you're actually doing a charitable.
Non-profit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why fiscal sponsorship is a much easier way to go. I think they take about 10% of your money. Somewhere between 5 and 10%, depending on the organization. But you don't have to do any of that work, and you're instantly set up.
Right. Thank you.
One last question.
Do you have any experience with iTunes Film?
I do not have any experience with iTunes Film. My general experience, I do have experience with the App Store. You know, Apple is really a pay-to-play kind of a place, like everywhere else now. So, you know, if you put it up there, expect not to get any sales through Apple. Now, something may happen where somehow you end up on their list somehow, My guess is most of the people who end up on that list have some kind of relationship with Apple in some way. But it's not, if you're selling your movie, you might as well be there to enable people to find you in the Android Play Store or the Apple Store or Amazon. You know, once you're going that route, you can get in there. It doesn't cost you anything to get in there.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll have a 10-minute break.
Thank you very much.
What time do you start?
10 minutes. Yeah. Well, we'll be back here as well, so feel free to have
I will show you.
tea.
You have the Wi-Fi?
Yeah.